Bungie is changing PvP at its core, but is it the right move? Let's talk about it. The PvP sandbox has remained relatively the same for a few years now, with minor weapon and ability tuning here and there. But Bungie's looking to change all that starting today. If you aren't already familiar, in the past few TWABs, Bungie has outlined a ton of changes coming to the Crucible, as well as touching on various things like matchmaking, game modes, and rewards. There's quite a lot to get into, so grab yourself some tea, coffee, an energy drink, a cup of lukewarm bathwater. I won't judge, I don't know. To start things off, let's talk about the sandbox changes coming today. Starting with abilities. Right off the bat, our abilities are getting hit with longer cooldowns. Melee, grenade, and class abilities will have a 15% penalty, and supers will have a whopping 20%. Note, this only applies inside of Crucible. In fact, going forward, always assume I'm talking about Crucible. PvP is the lens I look through whenever there is any change made inside of Destiny. So with that in mind, Threaded Spectre, which has been a hot ability ever since its release, is finally getting tuned. I think they made some good changes here, reducing its uptime by implementing the same class ability cooldown as Ensnaring Slam, which is around 5 seconds. Additionally, they've slightly reduced Threadling's potency overall, because let's be real, Threadlings are what pushed Threaded Spectre over the edge. I mean, don't get me wrong, the get out of jail free card that is Threaded Spectre is annoying enough, but when you have to deal with 2 little monsters chasing you down as you try to finish off that slippery hunter, it becomes a bit too much. So they've reduced Threadling damage by 5% in PvP, as well as made Threadlings easier to kill overall. To combat the Threadling changes, they've pulled in some buffs originally slated for the final shape. Broodweavers will be getting a more potent super ability. In this case, a lot more aim assist and better tracking. We'll have to see if this makes it as potent as something like Blade Barrage, which is quite difficult to avoid. This is definitely a step in the right direction, but I would have liked to see Threadlings removed from Threaded Spectre completely, or at least reduced to just 1. I'm not sure if the cooldown and small reduction in damage will be enough to really make a difference here. At the end of the day, hunters can still throw 9 Threadlings at you using the Threadling Grenade and 6th Coyote. Titan's got a nice buff to our Consecration aspect on Solar, increasing both its travel distance and speed, as well as an additional 1 meter height increase. Definitely want to try this out. And lastly, hunters can relax a bit more when detonating their Gunpowder Gamble Grenade. Now, before I get into any weapon changes, we've got to talk about one of the biggest changes coming, and that's the increase to player health. Player health in base Crucible has been unchanged since as long as I can remember. They're going to increase our health by a whopping 30. I know, that doesn't seem like much. I expected way more than that, but their reasoning is pretty cool. Rather than individually tuning each item like grenades or body shot damage, by simply increasing player health, both of those things have reduced lethality across the board. That does mean they'll need to bring other damage values up, but they get into that later. Ever since Checkmate was released, we knew Bungie was testing the waters for a Crucible overhaul, primarily by reducing the ease of securing a kill inside of the current sandbox by rewarding headshots drastically more than body shots. However, when Checkmate first dropped, the main people saying how amazing it was were those that used hand cannons. And that was for a good reason. All other weapons had their optimal TTK values reduced, essentially giving you a huge advantage when running a hand cannon. Luckily, they've since changed that and are using the current sandbox's optimal TTK values. I say optimal because inside of Checkmate, you'll need to hit precision shots almost exclusively. Any body shot deals much less damage than regular Crucible. And it's this aspect that Bungie is bringing forward into their new sandbox. More focus on consistently hitting headshots and making it more punishing for missing them. I am personally all for this. I believe Destiny is an incredibly forgiving game. It's part of the reason why people love it so much. Oh, your shot was just to the right of their head? Don't worry about it. We'll give you those crispy yellow numbers anyway. The good news is that that's not changing, unless you're a sniper rifle. Then it's changing a little bit. I do believe hand cannons will still be the strongest option going forward. Automatic weapons will take a backseat, and I wouldn't doubt that hand cannons get an aim assist cone decrease after a few months, but the future looks bright. The second major change coming today will be to the special ammo economy. Pulling in the mechanic from Checkmate, which they said they might do, everyone will start off with 2 kills worth of ammo. And then, in order to get more, you'll need to fill up a meter. I personally think this is a better option than what has been in the game so far. The current way they do ammo has always heavily favored shotguns and fusion rifles, since they are close range weapons. Well, fusion rifles did. Anyways, this change will allow for equal ammo gain. I do think this may have a small snowball effect, considering kills are the main way you earn special ammo. However, they include a bunch of other ways to get the necessary 100 points, such as deaths, assists, and playing the objective. Additionally, in the most recent TWAB, they add that they're also playing with spawning in special ammo crates like they did in Destiny 1. And that in the future, they might play around with mixing both. So now that we've established the root of why the sandbox is going to feel so different, let's discuss how our weapons are changing. They added target lock to breakneck. We'll see if that changes anything. Lightweight scouts got a 5% damage buff. They looked at how powerful fusion rifles are and thought, hey, let's nerf sniper rifle aim cone by 10%. That'll really do the trick. Vex got a higher damage fall off scaler. Wishender finally gets the nerf it needed since day freaking one. True Sight will now deactivate if you leave ADS or hold it for longer than 3 seconds. Thank goodness. This is a great way to combat Oathkeeper hunters that just hard scope and wait for you to peek. I personally would have rather seen them implement a pulsing effect, 1.5 seconds of wall hacks, 1.5 seconds of no wall hacks, and so on. But we'll see how this plays out. Manticore is getting a lot of changes. Players now have to be in the air for half a second and deal damage to activate the perk. This should prevent people from catching the smallest bit of air and being stuck there. It also gets a new special reload, which will also be coming to Taraba, so maybe not so special. But get this, the Catalyst now returns ammo to the mag and grants a void overshield. That's gonna be fun. How much of an overshield? Who knows? To account for the special weapon ammo changes, they've reduced the lethality of some exotics and boosted others. Most notably, Fighting Lion got a whopping 20% damage reduction versus players. Ouch. Devil's Ruin's Laser Beam also got hit with a 15% damage reduction, while Forerunner gets a 20% damage buff to maintain that 3-shot TTK. They're also rebalancing weapons to maintain an optimal TTK with the health increase. Here's a quick chart by blueberries.gg showing those changes. Things that stick out here are that SMGs are getting a heavier body shot reduction than any other archetype. Considering it's already getting hit by the health increase, this 3% will further discourage body shots. But hey, if it means I can live out my days using off-meta weapons, that's fine with me. I want people to say, oh man, he's using an SMG. Mad props to you, sir. This used to be the case, but ever since Iclos 2.0, followed by Immortal and Unending Tempest, things have been dangerous out there. The same used to be true for bows as well before the hit scan change they made somewhat recently. Speaking of bows, they are getting a base damage reduction of 15%, which is completely fair. This might make combat bows require at least one headshot to kill, much like how recurve or lightweight bows currently function. I personally always preferred recurve bows over compound, but I may have a slight, and by slight I mean huge, bias since I shoot recurve in real life. Interestingly enough, not everything is being brought up to offset the health increase. Most notably, sniper rifles, which will only further push their body shot damage down. I personally thought they were in a nice place after the most recent nerf to body shot damage, but okay. What I'm really worried about, however, is headshotting an enemy in super. It feels bad when you get that life-saving headshot, but it doesn't finish them off. The previous nerf to aim cone size is really laying it on thick here, but that one at least makes sense now because they're attempting to widen the skill gap. With the increase in health, they have also upped super and melee damage by 30% and 16% respectively. They also buffed flux grenade damage so it can still one-shot. Bungie also updated some weapon perks, but there's really only one I care about. This one. Target lock on SMGs has been nerfed. It only took half a year and them killing my boy to finally realize this was the issue. Shocker, it wasn't Peacekeepers. Expect to see SMG usage drop now that they've taken away the thing that made them so strong. And by them, I mean Unending Tempest and Immortal. So those are all the changes coming to the sandbox, but we're not done yet. In the most recent TWAB, Bungie has outlined changes to maps, rewards, game modes, and matchmaking. pause here to go get more bathwater or tea. The PvP strike team has made sweeping changes to some of the maps. This includes changes to player spawning, zone locations, and heavy spawn as well. Most notably, they've completely removed backfield spawning for all game modes except Rift for larger maps like the Citadel, Cathedral of Dusk, Disjunction, and Convergence. On paper, to me, it sounds like this will increase spawn killing since there is less open space to spawn in. However, it could provide better escape routes so you don't get spawn trapped. We'll see what happens. I'm very interested in how these changes will play on Dead Cliffs, which is known for spawn trapping in the back of Zone A. The good news is we won't have to wait long because they said we'll get to see these changes in trials after March 5th. We also can look forward to new maps dropping sometime in May. Rewards are also being updated come March, with Crucible players finally being able to acquire Artifice armor without setting foot in PvE. Hallelujah. They're bringing back the Year 1 armor set for this, which isn't my favorite as far as visuals, but who cares, we've got ornaments. You can obtain these rewards by completing a 3rd tier of the weekly challenge for the competitive playlist. And once complete, every match afterwards will have the chance to drop Artifice armor. One notable change to this challenge is that it will require victories, not just match completions. This gives a ton of replay value to comp now, instead of just playing 3 games a week to unlock weapon focusing. They've added a brand new trials passage called Passage of Persistence. Each win will increase your progress like normal, but a loss will decrease your progress. This can only happen one time after each win, so subsequent losses won't reduce your progress. This means in order to move up a peg, you'll have to win 2 games in a row. If you've managed to reach 7 wins, your hard work will be rewarded with the weekly Adept weapon. It's worth noting that this will not grant you access to the Lighthouse to open the Flawless chest. This passage is a great way for anyone who struggles to go Flawless to obtain Adept weapons. One thing I'm curious about is whether this will allow you to grind for more Adepts after reaching 7 wins. My assumption is no, since it doesn't count as a Flawless that week, but we'll see. They've also added incentives to players who play trials with a full fire team of 3. You can expect more weapons, more engrams, and more reputation per game. This is seemingly in response to a lot of people claiming that fireteam-based matchmaking has ruined trials. I could create a whole video alone on that topic, but the short of it is that fireteam-based matchmaking actually saved trials. The population in trials when only fire teams of 3 were allowed to play was incredibly low. A lot has changed since then, mainly rewards. However, if we were to go back to that, you can expect a steep decline in active players in the trials playlist. As a mainly solo player myself, the freelance playlist was my favorite week to play. I didn't have to wait for friends to be free, and I especially didn't have to go LFG players who were at the same skill as me in order to go Flawless. I could do it all on my own and at whatever time suited me best. Fireteam-based matchmaking, while not ideal for everyone, is honestly the best way to keep the game mode alive and well. Speaking of game modes, Bungie has too many. I don't know what their obsession is with adding more and more game modes, but it really has to stop. I feel like there is someone in leadership who said, oh, we should make lots of game modes. That will bring in players. And then they went absolutely nuts with them. I can't even keep track of how many different Iron Banner game modes there are now. It's honestly a mess. The biggest reason why more game modes is not the answer is that once released, you need to continually support each mode, giving it its time in the sun each season. So if you have 30 game modes, players who enjoy a specific one may only see it come into rotation once each season. Another reason is that you divide your player population with each new game mode. They recently allowed players to select which Iron Banner mode they'd like to play, whichever special mode is available that week or regular control. While I believe that was a good compromise, what you now get is a split player base. Only Bungie can actually see the numbers, but I can't imagine it's a 50-50 split. Even if it was, you've now lost a good chunk of the player population. With that said, Bungie just made a new game mode. It's called Collision, and it's a 3v3 King of the Hill style mode, which honestly sounds pretty fun. I also absolutely love Countdown Rush. It's like a game of chess. So while I think it's silly to just keep making new game modes to try and keep PvP afloat, I can't say I'm not benefiting from it. Now we've reached our final topic, and one that has hands down been the thing that was choking the life out of Crucible: matchmaking. Bungie goes through in detail the types of matchmaking they have implemented in the game, and it is lovely. I love the transparency here. I'm a big advocate for no skill-based matchmaking in non-competitive playlists, and it has to do with one thing and one thing only: variation. Variety is the spice of life, and without it, things get dull and boring. With that being said, Bungie has finally done what I have been suggesting for over a year now, which was only to protect the outliers. If skill was a scale from 1 to 10, ones would never play against 10s and vice versa. I honestly don't know how I missed that they implemented this at the start of Season 23. I feel like fireworks should have been going off. They casually mentioned this in the November 9th TWAB, but made it sound less like they were switching to an entirely different matchmaking system and more like they were just widening the parameters like they had done in previous updates. Either way, this is huge. I can't believe it's taken me this long to realize they did this. I partially attribute this to there just being a whole lot less people playing Crucible in Season 23, which means that the only people who are still there are the ones who enjoy it the most, aka skilled players. They also mentioned comp matchmaking actually matching based on rank, which apparently happened last season. I don't know how I missed this too. I must have been living under a rock at this point in time where it just wasn't clearly communicated, but either way, I love it. I remember facing Ascendant players when I was in Gold 2 because the game was like, well, you should be in Ascendant. It was a nightmare to try and climb. Lastly, Bungie details that they are going to be experimenting with a new snake draft lobby balancer. I could have sworn they already did this years ago, but I guess not. It should be a welcome addition. I'm super happy with all these changes. It gives me a lot of hope for the future of PvP inside of Destiny. We went through a full year and a half, maybe more, of growing pains, but the light at the end of the tunnel is finally visible. Bungie is finally supporting the Crucible again, and I, for one, am excited. Thank you all so much for watching. This was a long one, and I truly do appreciate each and every one of you. If you liked the video, go ahead and poke the little button down there. And if you really liked the video, consider subscribing. I hope you all have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next one.